Hey everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, joined as I am each and every week by my dear friend, the editor and publisher of thespun.com, the one and only, the great Matt Holatic. Matt, how you doing, friend?
I'm doing well, Hondo. Always good to be talking some ball with you. And I can't believe we're talking about the playoffs already.
Does it not just seem like yesterday we were talking about, thank God it's the start of OTAs? I'm being completely serious. I was
No,
on the
yeah,
airplane. I was on the airplane last night and just, you know how you do sometimes in your mind, it's super late, you're catching a red eye, and I was just thinking, where did this year go? I mean, it just goes by so fast. I've never seen like it. The NFL football season, as long as it is, goes by so fast, doesn't it?
it does. And it's funny. I think that football in general, NFL and college, especially NFL with how year round it is, the buildup and the anticipation of the season seems like it's lasting forever. And then the season goes by like this. And listen, you're talking about 18 weeks, 4.5 months basically. And 17 games, but they fly by, and next thing you know, you're sitting here like we are in January, and you're talking about breaking down the road to the Super Bowl.
I was talking yesterday with um, a significant NFL player, and we were just talking about how fast the season's over or whatever, and he mentioned to me. Well, actually, I mentioned to him. I said, would you like to see more games added? And he said, yeah, I would like to see, let's just get rid of preseason games and just add three more games. He goes, but to do that, you've got to expand the roster. We can't add any more without a bigger roster. And he goes, it's just too physically demanding. He goes, if you made the three preseason games regular season games and you expanded the roster instead, let's say from 53 to 60 or even 63, he said, and just made all the practice squad guys part of the team every week. He said, I would. He goes, but no more than that. He goes, it's just too physically demanding. And I agree with him, by the way. But here was my thought that got me thinking on the airplane last night. I think one of the reasons Christmas is such a popular holiday is that it's only once a year. Excuse me. It's only once a year. So there's that huge anticipation. And then it seems like Christmas is over. I, I, I don't, I'm not a baseball fan. I used to be, grow up in Michigan, Sparky Anderson, the Tigers, all of that. But baseball lost me. Baseball moved away from me. And so they lost me. But too much more than maybe taking away the preseason games. I think football's in danger of saturating too much, right or wrong.
I don't know because I just think that the league is so popular. We talk about it now all the time on here, how it's a year-round entity, and it goes right from the regular season to simultaneously the postseason for 14 teams right now, but it's also the coaching carousel for the 18 teams that didn't make the playoffs. For some of them, not all of them are looking for head coach, but some are looking for coordinators, things like that. It's draft season for some of those teams already, as fans are starting to talk about mocks and all those type of things and who they can pick. Pretty soon it'll be the combine, it'll be everything else. So, I don't know. I think the NFL's got a pretty good thing going for it. I think that people that are fans of football really like the really like what the football has to offer, and they're not complaining.
So let me throw this to you in a different angle then. I was talking to Warren Spahn, obviously no longer with us, but the tremendous Hall of Fame baseball pitcher once. And we were talking about baseball and professional baseball. And I had mentioned to him at that point, I hadn't completely turned my back on baseball, but I was headed in that direction. And he talked about when he was coming up as a pitcher, there was none of this pitch count. There was none of this, okay, I'm going to take you out because you can't finish a game. You were given the baseball and you were told, go pitch. He goes, go back and look at how many innings we pitched or how many pitches we threw compared to modern day. And he made a statement, and this is where I'm going with this, that stats today, now this was several years ago, but still aren't like they used to be because there was a lot less teams. So there are a lot of guys who back in his day would be in the minor leagues that are stars allegedly now, and it's diluted the thing. My whole concern is take away the 3 preseason games and make them regular season. I'm fine with that. If that's what the players and everybody agree on, let's do 20 games, but no preseason. But expanding more than that, I think there's a chance of diluting the product. And you still say no bueno on that? You don't agree?
No, I agree with. I think diluting the interest is where I disagree. I think the interest will be there regardless.
But
But
you
I
dilute
think
the product.
the product, the product, yes, I think because even with the extra game added now and the reduction of preseason, I think you see the first month or so of the season gets a little sloppy, and the
Right.
product is a little shaky early on. So I think you would see that. The interest level, I don't know if there's anything the NFL could do to dilute its interest level. But the product, yes, that I would agree with.
I had an NFL general manager once tell me this, and I think it's brilliant. I never thought of it. He said there are 8 teams in the NFL every year who are 100% convinced they've got their quarterback to go win a Super Bowl. Then there are 8 teams that are hoping they've got that quarterback to go get them to the Super Bowl. Then there are 16 teams looking for one of those 16. I thought
Right.
that was brilliant analysis. And this is where I'm concerned about, don't add any more teams because there's already at least half, if not more, that have quarterbacks that shouldn't even be on an NFL team. And if you keep adding teams, you're going to dilute the thing until stats no longer matter.
Right. And you look at this year, there was a lot of injuries and a lot of quarterback injuries we saw this
Mhm.
year, which is the last thing that the league wants. I mean, you look at how many big name QBs or quality starting quarterbacks missed, excuse me, significant time this year, whether it was Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins. Um, I know I'm missing some others for sure, but there was just a ton of injuries at the QB position, which is the last place the league wants guys getting hurt because they really control more so than anybody else the quality of the product on the field.
Sure do.
So yeah, I think that's where it would become problematic if the league expanded too much.
Yeah. And you want to know something? So TJ Duckett, who the first round
Mhm.
draft pick of the Atlanta Falcons, big monster running back, part of my family now, so I'm a little bit biased. I love the guy, but ran a 4.4 4.3 40. And I'll never forget, I was talking to him after, I think it was after his rookie season, may have been after his sophomore year, but in the NFL, his second year. And I asked him, what's the biggest jump from college to the NFL? And he said, I'll never forget it. First day tackling in training camp, my rookie season. I take the ball, I go on a sweep, and I got tackled. And I looked around, and I'm gonna tell the story a little bit different, just for the sake of keeping it clean. And he goes, I turned around, who tackled me? And here's a defensive lineman. He goes, I had never been tackled, been caught by a defensive lineman. Obviously, going up the middle, he'd been tackled. He goes, and I realized, man, at this level, everybody's fast. And I don't want him to dilute the product. I love the NFL.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I loved college football. But college football now has turned itself into the pros. So if I'm going to turn it, I still like it, but not like I used to. And I love the NFL. I just love it. All right, let's go to the Raiders now. A lot to talk about here. Um, as you saw, I put the story out last night. I was talking to a Giants executive that said if the Raiders don't hire AP, he'd be right on near the top of a list for the DC and with the Giants. Antonio Pierce, tremendous football coach, extremely smart. I laugh at people talk about him not being, all X's and O's. I've made the comment. Your head coach doesn't have to be Mr. X's and O, meaning breaking down an offense, breaking down a defense. But this man knows the game as good as anybody. He gets it. He understands it. He may not know all the X's and O's about offense, but for all those years on defense, he knows what offenses look like. And even though he's a defensive coach, that's just foolishness. He's very smart. He gets the game. He's a film hawk. Talk about the job you think he did finishing 5-4 and the job you think he did as the interim coach of the Raiders.
Well, I think that we've talked about it all the time on here, and I think he's done enough, at least looking at it from an outside perspective and from a big picture perspective. I think he did enough to earn a look as the permanent guy. And I thought that I've been consistent with saying this. I think that when you look at what happened 2 years ago when Mark Davis didn't hire Rich Bisaccia, who had a lot of support among Raider fans and Raider players, and he went out, he hitched his wagon to Josh McDaniels and it didn't work out. Now you put yourself in a position where you have to nail this hire, period. If you go away from the popular interim head coach and you bring in an outsider, whether it's, you talked about last week, Jim Harbaugh, we both talked about, you talked about if he ever went back to John Gruden, if it was a possibility, anything like that. If you bring in a guy like that, it had better work out, and it had better work out resoundingly and pretty quickly as well. Because Antonio Pierce, I think, listen, is there stuff he's still got to learn? I'm sure. Yes, you don't know everything you know as NFL head coach through 9 games, whether either 9 games as the permanent head coach or the interim head coach. But he did show a lot. I think he's a significant supporter of his players. He got his guys to buy in and believe and play hard. Like you mentioned with the Giants at the beginning of the segment, I would definitely be interested in seeing him interview or be a candidate for the Giants DC job if the Raiders don't hire him, because I think that he would bring a lot to the table. He doesn't have the DC experience that Wink Martindale had, obviously, but he does have that defensive knowledge, that intensity, that accountability that he bring, which would be interesting.
He was a coordinator at Arizona State.
He was a coordinator, right? But that NFL experience. I mean, Wink had done it.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
But he's done it before, like you said, and he does bring that element of I've been a pro in New York. I've won a Super Bowl in New York. It would be, it would win the PR. It would be an exciting hire for Giants fans, definitely. But I think he deserves a shot in Vegas full time.
And if you bring him into New York, you've got your next coach.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is a no-brainer for the Raiders. But if the Raiders somehow, Mark Davis decides, I want to do something else, it's his team, do whatever he wants. He doesn't need my opinion. He didn't care what I think. If I'm the Giants, I have a jet waiting in Vegas. The moment Mark Davis says you're not the guy, there. If I'm the Giants, I make the move now and just go make him your head coach. But I get it, total sense. So let's talk about the Raiders in general. You look at all of the weapons, and there's a lot of them. Michael Mayer, really an emerging tight end. You got Colton Miller, who's very, very good offensive lineman. Dylan Parham's a very, very good offensive lineman. They've got an offensive line that's not terrible in the least bit. Are they elite? All of them as a unit? No. I mean, Greg Van Roten played so well, but he's older. He's at the end of his career. I know they would like to go a little bit. But would they like to upgrade? Yes. But still, you got a couple of stars in Parham and Colton Miller. You obviously have Devontae under contract. Jacoby Myers under contract. I anticipate Hunter Renfrow probably moving on. Josh Jacobs, if AP doesn't get the job, I expect him to move on. But they got Zamir White, who looks phenomenal coming along. Go to the other side of the ball. You got Robert Spillane, who got robbed. Should have been an All-Pro. He got robbed, but he's a linebacker. He's great. Divine Diablo's a guy coming, getting better all the time. Kuntz and Crosby are there. You got some really good interior defensive linemen. You look at a Nate Hobbs, you look at a Jack Jones, look at the youth in the secondary. They're coming. Patrick Graham, if he doesn't get a head coaching job, he'd be there with AP. There's a lot on this team. This is not a rebuild, regardless of who the coach is. It's not a rebuild, in my opinion. You got the best punter, the best kicker, got a terrific long snapper. You're solid on defense, solid on special teams, and a lot of weapons to become solid on offense. Where am I wrong?
No, I agree. I think that next year, especially when you look at improving by 2 games this year from 2022, 8 and 9, I think that the possibility is there for a 10-7 season or better next year to be in the hunt for the playoffs. I think that, with the right hire, the right offseason moves and development, this can be a playoff team next year. It's not obviously, like you said, it's not a tear down, it's not a rebuild. There's some pieces in place, and I mean, the only thing I could see them doing in terms of a rebuilding type move is, like you said, if the Jets are willing to offer an exorbitant amount for Devontae Adams, you might have to take it as good as he is, just because it would be too good to pass up. But if they don't, then you still have one of the best receivers in football on your roster next year. Obviously, the quarterback position needs to be shaken out. Are you going Aiden O'Connell as your starter? Are you going to take a guy this year in the draft? Are you going to do something else at the position? You'll see. But I think that there's enough talent on the roster, and the roster has shown enough this year in the second half of the season under Antonio Pierce to say that, okay, regardless of who the head coach is next year, there's a possible playoff team in the mix here.
I'm going to tell you, Matt, if they move away from AP, and I don't care who the coach is, it can be Gruden, it could be Harbaugh, whomever, and let's make no mistake, it's a 2-horse race. If there is a third candidate, it would be John Gruden, but it's a 2-horse race. It's Harbaugh or AP. They're going to be an element of rebuild. That's just and that's not a slam on Gruden or Harbaugh. You're going to come in with your system, what you want to do. That I've had someone say to me, "Are you?" It's almost like it sounds like you're trying to threaten the Raiders. I'm not trying to threaten the Raiders. That's a reality. Anytime. This is what I said when Rich Bisaccia was there. And you may remember, I asked Mark Davis, is this a rebuild? No. Okay. Because I said at the time then, anytime you bring in a new coaches, there's going to be an element of a rebuild. I'm going to say this to you, Matt. These fans, and you remember, because you and I have been friends for nearly 2 decades, a decade and a half. I told you when I came out here, I'm really anxious to kind of get to know this fan base. I heard a lot about them. I know them now. And I'm out in the parking lots when they're tailgating. I'm talking to them. I'm interacting with them. Their reputation is so unfair. They don't care. They're glad that people think they're a bunch of thugs. But it's just, you could be out in there. This is the funny thing I've learned about these people. They don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. They don't care what color you are. They don't care about your gender. They don't care about anything else. Are you silver and black? That's all. That's all they care about. And you can go find a rich doctor, and a guy on Social Security that disagree on everything, hanging out with each other, having a drink, eating a rib. I mean, it's just amazing. They deserve better than what their franchise has given them. They deserve better than what the Raiders have done for them. And the Raiders' motto that they sell is just win, baby. You've had two coaches that took you to the playoffs. You fired them both. Let's talk about the fans' perspective. This is one of the best fan bases in all of professional sports, and they deserve better. They don't deserve to go through another rebuild. Am I right or wrong?
It's a really loyal fan base. Like you said, it's a fan base that is with the organization, with the team through thick and thin. I see it every week just by looking on your Facebook page for Raider Nation. What people are saying, and they're silver and black through and through, but they're getting frustrated. This is now 2 decades of kind of instability and a lot of losing and no real vision and consistent foundation. So I think that's what the Raiders are looking for. They're looking to kind of get back to, what they had, obviously. Now, they haven't won a Super Bowl in 40 years, but if you look at the 2 decades from 84 after the last Super Bowl through the 2002 season, so a little less than 2 decades, they had experienced some success. In the back half of the 80s, they were in the playoffs multiple times. In the 90s, they had a few playoff appearances, and there were a couple of seasons where they missed the playoffs, but they were 500, 9-7. They were in the mix. Things really didn't start to fall apart until 2003 after the Super Bowl loss to Tampa Bay. And I think that the fans, they deserve better. Any fan base that's dealt with that kind of long-standing ineptitude or struggles is going to get frustrated and deserves better. And I think the Raiders, especially when you look at how loyal and how passionate and how just expansive the fan base is, because it goes from coast to coast and in foreign countries too.
Around the world.
Yeah. It's a fan base that's deserving of a consistent product, a consistent good product, a consistent winner.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. I want to go in a little bit of a different direction, still talking Raiders. Oh, by the way, I got to tell you. So I'm out in the parking lots at the tailgates on Sunday, and had this guy come up to me, and I don't remember his name. It was Raider something, because everybody's Raider something, and super nice guy, older guy, and I wish I could remember his name. I'm sorry, but walks up to me and he goes, "I love your podcast." And I said, "Thank you." He goes, "Watch it every week." I said, "Thank you." He goes, "I want to describe Raider Nation to you." I'm like, "Okay." All right. So he's probably 5'6". So obviously standing next to me. And I go, "Okay." But he's super intense, man. It was so funny. He goes, "We're like that lady that's the best wife in the world." Okay. And all her idiot husband does is cheat on her. All right. And we still stay faithful. And I'm like, wow. And then he mentioned a Denzel Washington movie, which I don't remember which one it was, but evidently there's a scene in the movie where his wife basically says, "You've been a cheater and you've been," he goes, and Denzel's wife's telling him, "You're a cheater, you're this, but I've always stayed faithful to you." I don't know what movie that was, and I think I've seen every Denzel Washington movie, so I don't, but that's what he said. So I'm telling you, he goes, "We're them. You've cheated on us. You do. But guess what? We're here. I'm here through Josh McDaniels." I mean, it was just, he was so intense. It was just awesome. And that's them, Matt. I mean, they are just faithful. They're faithful.
They are, and you got to give it to them. And I think it's something that's generational, because I think it's something that's passed down from father to son and mother to son and father daughter, mother daughter. It's grandfathers, uncles, everything. It's extended from one generation to the next, because I know even out on the East Coast by me, some of my friends who are Raider fans are second or third generation. Their dads
Yep.
were Raider fans, their grandparents were Raider fans. So they have that connection too. So, or they're gonna pass it down to their kids. Um, so yeah, it's something that definitely has, it's a
It's in
special
their
bond.
blood.
It's in their
It's
blood,
in their
yes.
blood. There
Mhm.
are some people that are fans. Like, I'll give you an example. I've got a ton of relatives being from Michigan who are Lion fans.
Mhm.
Okay. And they'll wear the clothing or whatever. But if the Lions win or lose, who cares? Okay. If, if, if the, when they're rooting for the Super Bowl, it's okay. Yeah, I'm going to root for Green Bay, or I'm going to root for Chicago, or I'm going to root for whomever in the Super Bowl. Okay. Raider fan, who you rooting for? Nobody. I'm going to watch it because I love football. But now I take that back. If Kansas City, Denver, or the Chargers are playing, they're rooting for whoever's playing them.
Right.
Or if New England's playing, they're rooting at who's ever playing them. But I mean, for the most part, no, don't root for anyone else. I'm a Raider, man. I love it. And it's so much that my wife, after the game, you're going to appreciate this one because you and I haven't had a chance to talk. My wife texts me either right after the game or just at the end and says, screw it. I know you're not a fan. That's your job. You're neutral. I am, and I'm raising Dexter a Raider fan. I mean, they got her. They got her, Matt. And
That's awesome.
I just think it's special. I think it's special. All right. I want to go to Aiden O'Connell. This is a young man that finishes second highest rookie quarterback. I think in his multiple games. I think in the last 4 games, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Um, he just, where there's some lacks, yep, but he's also a rookie. Um, because you've known me a long time, and I'm not going to change who I am. I like my quarterback to have a little bit of mobility. I think he could develop that because I've seen him at times, especially at Purdue, where he had a little bit. He didn't use it at all, but he protects the football. He got better. He made wise decisions. And I don't think you've seen enough to say he's the next Ken Stabler. But I also don't think you've seen enough to say he's not. I think he's developing, but I think there's a lot of reasons. Now, I'm still going to go get a quarterback in the draft and let them compete because I think you want that. Competition's good for everybody. But I like this kid. I know this off the record. I've not heard one player say, oh, we got to get another quarterback. Off the record, and I talked to a lot. Man, I'll tell you what, I think he could be special. I think he could do this. He's got the cannon of the arm. I think you get him with somebody that can develop him. You give him an OTAs, mini camps, training camps with a new scheme. I think there's a lot. Again, I still go get a quarterback and let them compete. But I think this kid has a lot of upside, and I am in no way willing to say he's the next Kenny Stabler, but I'm in no way willing to throw him away. I think, first of all, I like him personally, but he is a kid I think he's got a lot of potential. Your thoughts as an outsider on Aiden?
I thought he acquitted himself really well this year, getting thrown into the fire mid-season, and kind of a team that was struggling, and now you're the guy. I think at the very least, he's shown he has a future in the league. The Raiders still have to determine what that future is. Is it as a high-end kind of backup, cheap backup now for the next couple of seasons? Do they think they can make him a quality starting quarterback? If he's a quality starting quarterback, is he one of those guys that you hope you can win a Super Bowl with, or is he eventually one of those guys you can win a Super Bowl with?
Great
Um,
point.
you got to, that's to be determined. I agree with you. I think Antonio Pierce unless Antonio Pierce is the head coach and he's really sold on O'Connell, I would bring in another quarterback in the offseason. I'm assuming that if it's Jim Harbaugh or if it's John Gruden somehow, that they would want to bring another quarterback because they're going to look to bring in their own guy or have some type of competition at the position. So I think that what you found is you have an asset. It's just a matter of how much is that asset going to grow and what is its peak value and end value going to be.
One of the things is I think Aiden O'Connell would bring in another quarterback because you have Brian Hoyer, who's older. You've got Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Aiden O'Connell would bring in another quarterback. He's extremely comfortable in his own skin. I I think you got to bring him in because you always want competition. Now, guess what? I'm one of these guys. You're drafting a quarterback every year, trying to always have competition, looking because the quarterback position's too important to not have competition, and it's hard for guys to go a whole season without getting injured. But again, I hear people say, "Oh, he sucks. He's terrible." Really? Now I want to go to AP because I want to talk about something in his leadership style that I don't think is getting any attention. And now, in fairness, I'm not watching other podcasts or reading a whole lot of other stuff. So there may be people talking about it that I'm unaware of. So he goes to them and says, listen, we didn't have OTAs, we didn't have mini camps, we didn't have training camps. We got here after the trading deadline. And oh, by the way, we're short 2 offensive coaches because we let Mick Lombardi and Josh McDaniels go. We have to throw out a bunch of the playbook because we don't have the personnel. We didn't even know it when Josh was here. We're going to play physical defense. We're going to be a really good defense. We're going to run the ball. We're not going to ask Aiden to go throw for 500 yards to beat people, but we're going to ask him not to hurt us. Don't throw the interceptions. Don't make those kind of mistakes. And we're going to go play that kind of football. He's got the cannon, so he can go downfield. He's got the arm. And so people will say, well, look at he had a QB rating of 110, but he only had 220 yards. Yup, but 2 TDs and no interceptions. I thought it was brilliant when people say, yeah, but he didn't do this. Well, that wasn't what he was asked to do. He was asked, don't lose us the game. If it's 3rd and 12, now listen, I hate it when it's 3rd and 7 and you throw the ball 6 yards. I hate it when it's 3rd and 5 and you throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage. I get it. But their belief was our defense is good. They're not going to score more than twice a game on us. So go ahead, do the safe one. 3rd and 12, we pick up 5. We'll punt it. Our defense will stop them. We're going to flip the field. You may disagree with that philosophy, but it worked for the Raiders. They finished 5-4. It worked with their young quarterback. I think it's an underrated X's and O's part of AP that said, listen, our motto is just not just win, baby. It's just win, baby. It's not just look sexy. The motto of the Raiders is just win. We just won. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's smart whenever you're breaking in a new quarterback, particularly a rookie, to kind of play to their strengths and not ask them to do something they're not comfortable with right away. And I think that that's what, good coaching is executing and doing exactly what you just said. I think the Raiders defense was its strong point all year long. It was its strong point before Josh McDaniels got fired. It was a strong point throughout Antonio Pierce's 9 games. So I think leaning on that defense and trying to win with that defense was the way to go. I mean, now, can you expect multiple defensive touchdowns every week? No, they got it in a couple of weeks in a row with the Chargers and Chiefs games. But, next year, you have to become a little bit more explosive offensively, put some more points on the board. But this year, I think it was the way to go. I think it was a sound strategy. And I think it worked for the most part. You're talking about a team that went 5-4, excuse me, picked up a couple of really nice wins down the stretch, and even some of the losses towards the end of the year, they were right in each game. I mean, the only loss I think that he had that was ugly was just because it was a 3-0 game, was that Viking game. They couldn't get anything going. But I mean, they could have beaten the Colts in week 17. They played the Chiefs tough in the game they lost to them in Vegas. They were in it for a little bit with Miami too down there. So I think that overall it was something that worked.
Yeah, totally agree with you. All right, so let's go in a different direction now. Harbaugh, no question, tremendous football coach, wins everywhere he's at. everywhere he goes. And I think that whoever they hire, if you get Harbaugh or you get Antonio Pierce, you're getting a great coach. Great coach. I mean, I don't one of them. I said this the other day. If I am any one of the 31 teams not named the Las Vegas Raiders, Harbaugh is number one on my list. Now, I'm going to have some issues with Jim that I'm going to want to talk to him about as far as the process of how he does things, but he's top of my list to talk to. And no one here, at least on my staff, is making it sound like Harbaugh's not a good coach or wouldn't be a viable option. But to me, for the Raiders, where they're at, where they've been at, the entire totality, what he's done, it's just as clear nobody other than AP. But it's hard to say somebody's going wrong with a Harbaugh. Your thoughts on Harbaugh in the NFL?
I think that overall the gist of what you said is kind of where I'm at. I think that to me, this is a guy, like you said, he's either won a championship or competed for championships every single place he's been. He turns every place around, and I think you know what you're going to get. Um, I think I'm expecting him to make the jump back to the NFL. I think that he's coming off a national championship at Michigan. He's a god in Ann Arbor for the rest of his life and beyond because he delivered the title, what he was asked to do and expected to do when they hired him. In the NFL, I think he'll be successful no matter where he goes in the NFL. The question is with the Raiders, if they're swinging big, and I do think he's the biggest swing you can take, and I think it would likely work out, at least in terms of you'd have some winning seasons, you better hit a home run because Antonio Pierce has shown on an interim basis, yes, but he's shown some aptitude for the position. He's shown kind of he fits in with the Raider ethos, the Raider organization. The players love him, the fans love him. So if you're going to go away from that, you had better be 100% sure that the guy you're getting is going to be a success. I think that Jim Harbaugh is by far the best option out there for teams to hire. It's just a question of is he the right guy for the Raiders?
Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right, let's quickly talk about the playoffs this weekend because that doesn't stop. Let's start on Saturday, where you got the Browns at Houston. I really like Houston. It's at Houston. My only thing is that Browns defense. I love the way Joe Flacco's playing. I'm going to take the Browns. I hope it's Houston, but I'm taking the Browns just because I think Flacco is extremely underrated. I think he's a really good quarterback, really underrated. And I love the Browns defense, and defense wins championships. I'm rooting for Houston. I think it's Cleveland. What do you think?
I think the defense from Cleveland travels on the road at Houston. And I know that CJ Stroud, I love CJ Stroud. He's unbelievable. One of the best performances by a rookie quarterback I've ever seen this whole season. I do think that the Browns have a little bit of playoff experience with Stefanski and with some of those guys that were around 3 years ago. It's a different beast when you get into the postseason. I wouldn't be shocked if the Texans won because that's how good DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud have been in year one.
Amazing.
But
yeah.
I think that when you take the Browns defense, and I think that when you take the fact that Joe Flacco has been playing really well and seems to almost have, that magic horseshoe going for him at this point, coming from off his couch to, being a starter again at the NFL level, I think the Browns win that one.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, DeMeco Ryan, look, anybody wants to know what you're getting in AP? DeMeco Ryan. All right, Dolphins at Kansas City. I've seen both teams on their home field, up close and personal this year. Kansas City a couple times. I've watched 9 or 10 Dolphin games. I've watched probably 12 or 13 Kansas City games. I'm going to be honest, just in what I saw with my own eyes, uh, Dolphins were more impressive to me, but to be the man, you got to beat the man, and the game's in Kansas City. I'm going to ride with the Chiefs. Chiefs Kingdom, their fan base at Kansas City is electric. It's going to be playoff time. I expect Kansas City to rise up. I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I, I quite frankly would rather see the Dolphins win. I think the Chiefs have played sloppy this year. I've not been impressed, but Andy Reid's the best coach in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. Um, I'm going to go with Kansas City. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know about Kansas City's staying power in these playoffs compared to past years. They really just don't look like the team that they've had. But I think
They're
they
not.
win this game. I think it's just a matter of in much of my reasoning for picking them is a matter of location. I think that when you look at the fact this is going to be a Saturday night primetime game at Arrowhead in 0-degree weather. Literally, I think this forecast is saying it's going to be about 0 degrees. Now you got the Dolphins coming in there, and excuse me, the Dolphins are banged up. You know, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Wild didn't finish the regular season. I don't know what they'll be like for Saturday. Just this week they said the two starting linebackers, Jerome Baker and Andrew Van Ginkel, are out for the probably the entire playoffs after getting hurt in the finale against the Bills. I think it's a disappointing end to the season for a really fun Dolphins team because they could have won a division at home in Week 18 against Buffalo and had a home playoff game. But I think they go on the road and lose on Saturday to Kansas City.
Have you ever been to Arrowhead?
I have not.
Oh, you just got to go. Got to go to Arrowhead. All right. Then we go to Sunday's game. Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Mike Tomlin, in my opinion, probably the second best coach in the National Football League behind Andy Reid. I love Mike Tomlin. I told you I had a player who played for AP and Mike Tomlin before they were head coaches. I don't know if I would say played for, but played on teams where they coached. Neither one was their position coach, but saw them both, that told me AP's Mike Tomlin. Pittsburgh heads to Buffalo. I'm riding the Buffalo train. I think this is such a good football team. It's at home. I don't think the weather affects Pittsburgh whatsoever, but I think Buffalo has a shot, a real legitimate shot of getting to the Super Bowl. I don't even think this is close. Congratulations to Tomlin getting in. God bless the guy. Great coach. But I'm telling you, flat out, I don't think Pittsburgh has a shot. Let's go with Buffalo. Your thoughts?
I think it's close or close-ish, close enough. I think that Mike Tomlin in the defense, even without TJ Watt, he'll find a way to keep them in the game, but I don't think they win. I can't see them winning this game, even with Mason Rudolph having played well down the stretch. The Bills have found something in their last, 5 weeks after that bye. I think they've gotten some type of mix of the right mix going. I think that they win this game, and I think they have a legitimate chance of at least getting back to the AFC title game this year. So I'm going with the Bills. I wouldn't be shocked if this game, like I said, if this game is a tighter game than people expect, or the Steelers hang around. I would be very surprised if they win the game.
Right. Next, this second Sunday game, Green Bay heads to Dallas. Now, you may remember beginning of the year, in our predictions, I predicted Green Bay to win the NFC Norris division. Lions did. I'm a big believer in Jordan Love. And I said this all before the season, as you know. Several of my friends in the NFL very high on him. He started a little bit slow. I think that was not just him; it was the team. But he's coming on strong. I'm not a buyer in Dallas. After Jimmy Johnson, even with Barry Switzer, I should say after Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and that group left, I'm not a buyer. Anytime you have expectations of the Cowboys, they fail. They're the ones. They're the gorgeous bridesmaid that you're always like, oh man, she's getting married next. Woo, she's giggity. and they always look the part, and they don't produce. I think they win this one at home. I think they have the talent and everything to win a Super Bowl, but they're not going to get there because they're Dallas and they always perennially disappoint. I think Green Bay's coming. I think this game is close. I think this is a one-score game, but Dallas finds a way. I'm sure the refs will help them. But your thoughts? I'm going to ride with Dallas, but don't make that think I'm a Dallas believer. And I still think Green Bay's coming.
I think Green Bay really the way they closed out the season was should have fans excited for the future, especially with Jordan Love and some of those young receivers. I think this is a game that Dallas wins. I think this is a game that's kind of, I've said the same thing about Dallas. I think everybody recognizes they have an immense amount of talent and they could probably enough talent to at least play in the Super Bowl, but they never seem to put it together when they have to. However, they have shown in the playoffs they can win these games that the first round games that they're expected to win. Like last year, they did it. They did it a few years ago when they beat Seattle at home. I think this is a game that they are expected to win. They've typically played very well at home this year. I think they win the game. I just don't know about what is coming up next for Dallas. I think a lot of it depends on who they're playing in round two. Because if they win on Sunday, and they're playing, let's say let's say they're playing the Eagles in round two or the Bucks in round two because the Rams upset Detroit. Dallas could be in an NFC title game. But if they're playing, it all depends on matchups for them. But I do think they win on Sunday.
My wife just handed me this note. I think the term you're looking for is always a bridesmaid, never a bride. But she said, but don't forget to tell the people, Raider. I'm not saying that. That was my wife saying, letting everyone know she's a Raider fan. Oh my God, that's kind of funny, isn't it?
That's awesome. She's dedicated. She's into it.
She's in. I'm telling you, man, she's all in. Oh, so well, we're gonna finish with that. We're gonna come back. I got some more Raider stuff to talk to you about. Rams at Lions. Now, a few weeks ago, I told you, wouldn't that just be like how the NFL works out if the Lions and the Rams end up playing in the playoffs in Detroit? Last game on Sunday. Now, I'm going to be up near the Canadian border, way up near Canada, on a hunting trip. I've been asked if I want to go cover the game. I can't. This was my wife's wedding present. I mean, my wife's Christmas present. If the Raiders weren't in the playoffs, she wanted to go on a hunting trip. She wanted a new rifle and to go on a hunting trip. So I would love to see Detroit go, and I'm not a fan because I grew up one, so many friends and family, but I have friends and family in both organizations, both as players, both in whatever. I just can't get behind the Lions. I just can't do it. Years ago, you may remember they started out when Rod Marinelli was coach. I think they started out 3-1 or something like that, or 5-2. And Mike Furry, who ended up being the NFL's leading receiver that year, and still remains one of my great friends. The wide receiver coach for the Bears, still remain him and Cora and his wife are some of our closest friends. He walks in the locker room, he goes, "Take that, media. What curse?" And then the season collapses. And I'll never forget after the year we were having dinner, and we still talk all the time. And he says to me, I almost think this curse stuff is real, and I don't believe in curses. He goes, it's the Lions. He goes, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I love Matthew Stafford, him and Kelly. I'm friends with, let's just say I got a lot of friends on the Rams teams, players that I'm very close with. Come up and see us in Vegas. We go out to eat at the casinos and have fun. My wife loves them. And so I'm picking the Rams on this because I just don't have faith in the Lions. I love Dan Campbell. I think it's a great roster, all of it. I'm just riding with the Rams. this is going to get me in so much trouble with the family, but I'm riding with the Rams. What do you think?
I think if the Lions were hosting the Packers, a team in their
Yes.
division that they've beaten,
Or
um,
Dallas.
that they're better than. I think if the Lions were hosting even the Eagles, a team that's been just falling apart the last 6 weeks, I would be picking the Lions to win this game. I think they can still beat the Rams,
I do too.
but I think that the Rams, to me, are a scary team in these playoffs with the way Matthew Stafford has been playing, with the way Sean McVay has kind of found a rhythm here, and the way they're playing offensive football. This is a Rams team. If they could get past um if they get past the Lions and say, they're playing say they're playing San Francisco, they could put a scare into San Francisco, I think, in the second round of the playoffs. I think it's going to be an awesome game Sunday night. I think it's a one-score game. I think the atmosphere in Detroit at Ford
It's
Field
going
is
to be
going to be
lit.
incredible. It's going to be just awesome, just an unbelievable playoff atmosphere. I would like to see the Lions win. I think the Rams win.
I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I don't know if you heard, I said the term lit. This is a
He
new
did.
word I've learned.
Yeah.
Have, you're a little bit younger than me, but do you know that term lit?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. Just making sure. I get mocked all the time because I'm not real good on how these modern kids talk. Like now they say 100, which means I agree with you, or facts, which means I agree with you. Remember, when I was a kid, if you said, "Oh man, you're cold," that was an insult. Now, whatever. All right. Now we move to Monday Night Football. My generation, if you're wondering, it's Howard Cosell, Chris Berman. Monday Football. Okay. Philly at Tampa. I don't think there's any doubt Baker Mayfield is the comeback player of the year. If you, matter of fact, I was going to put a tweet out the other day. Who is NFL comeback player of the year, and why did it take you so long to type Baker Mayfield? I know so many people that know him. I've met him several times, but I wouldn't say I know him, who love him. He's grown up. He's great. But I'm telling you, Philly's got a lot of talent. They're reeling, but I just think Philly finds a way to go on the road, get the win. I'm riding with I would love to see Tampa win. And we're up against the time clock, so we got to hurry a little bit. But I'm riding with the Eagles. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Philly has been reeling. They've looked awful the last 6 weeks. Nothing like what we've expected of them. And I think the Bucks have a shot in this game, unlike last year when I really felt like they were on fumes and couldn't beat Dallas and they got blown out. But I think Philly finds it, puts it together just enough for 1 week, and they win this game. But I don't think they're long for the playoffs.
All right. So very quickly, we got to end with this. AP's press conference yesterday. He's all Raider. Okay. You got to love his passion. And he's in the press room. And one of the press room things is we don't cheer. And matter of fact, they say before every game, this is a press box. Anyone cheering here gets kicked out. It's not what we do. Doesn't mean we're bad. Just means that's what you're not. Zeke Trezevant, who works for me, is a fan. Nothing wrong with that, but you don't cheer. And he does the Raiders like my wife just did. And one person who can be a fan, she works for the team, yells it back. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. He goes, "We got to work on that." I thought it was great. But was there any better way for him to end his press conference than that?
No, and I think it's like you said, he fits in with the culture. He's embraced everything about the Raiders, and I think he would be a tremendous hire if they choose to give him the permanent gig.
I agree with you 100%. All right, listen, I love you. I care about you. Can't wait to be back here talking with you next week. He is the great Matt Haletic from thespun.com. Remember, follow me on IG at Hondo SR. Follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter. Also, checking out all of our articles at si.com/NFL/Raiders. Also, when you're there, upper right-hand corner, click on the newsletter. You'll never miss another one of our big stories. I've got a series of articles. My next deep dive, and Matt, you know a little bit about them. It's going to be, there's so much information. It's going to be probably 3 days. Now, Matt, without breaking anything, because we want a little bit of suspense, are people not going to be riveted by these next sets of deep dives?
They'll be very, very intrigued. I know I am.
It's going to get a
Looking
lot of
forward.
national attention. Would you agree with that?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be powerful. So those are coming. Never miss anything again. Sign up for that newsletter, 100% free. We don't sell your content, but 3 days a week, we'll send you an email with all of our best stories so you never miss anything great again. Thank you, everybody. Remember, I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. This guy is Matt Hladik. He is the editor and publisher of thespun.com. Put it in your favorites. Check it out every day. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow.